Hey guys, Coach Adam talking to you again with a huge bikini video. If you like bikini breakdowns, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for doing that. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. This week we're going to be covering who's qualified for the Olympia, who's not qualified for the Olympia in the Olympia race. We're also going to be covering the 3 shows this weekend. And of course, I want to go do some follow-up on some controversy in the judging that I covered last week that had some comments I wanted to follow up on, which is perfect for this week's episode. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The meat and potatoes of everything this week, I think, is going to be the Olympia cutoff. We have ourselves a major race in this Olympia here. Now, if you go to the ifbbpro.com or you go to the MrOlympia.com, you can see the list of qualified athletes. So I have here charted who's qualified and who's yet to qualify for the Olympia. Now, here's the thing, guys. There are not a lot of shows here for the cutoff. The cutoff is in September 15th. So it's right around the corner here. And we have 16 shows to qualify. Now, out of the 16 shows to qualify, we have ourselves 30 athletes that were in the Olympia last year that are not in the Olympia yet this year. Crazy. So already, even if 100% of those athletes, or 50% of those athletes qualified, you'd still have 50% that weren't in there from last year. Crazy to think about. These are the best in the world and they're not getting back into Olympia. So let's look at some of those names that still need to qualify with the remaining 16 shows here. So you have, there's a couple that are out. Daraja is pregnant. Phoebe's not competing this year. You have Jourdain, Ariel, Tamikia, Alessia. She's been in the Olympia. I think Alessia's been in the Olympia the last, I want to say 3 years at least, maybe 4. Amanda Marquez in Brazil. Ellie Fernandez from Mexico, who's been a longtime competitor. I think she's even been as high as top 10 in the Olympia, constantly in the Arnold as well. Esther out there. You have Yulia, who Yulia won, I think, a couple shows last year, got to the Olympia, I think, for the first time last year. You have Jessica Wilson, Miss Olympia Masters Bikini, still needs to qualify for the Olympia. I'm surprised that the Masters Olympia doesn't qualify you for the Olympia, actually. But she still needs to qualify for the Olympia. Competed at Chicago. I'm going to be doing a review on the Chicago in this video as well. Lexi Raidman, Nade Nador, Romina Basualdo. Now, Romina is also a top 10 Olympian prior. Multi-time Olympian, multi-time Arnold competitor. Some of my favorite physiques, Jordan Fisher is still not in the Olympia yet. Savannah Watchman from last year, Sierra Swan, Eureka. I mean, there are some big names that are not in the Olympia yet, and we do not have a lot of time. So even out of the names I highlighted, if they were all to qualify, there still wouldn't be enough shows for them all to qualify. If they're all to compete, I should say, there wouldn't be enough time for them to all compete. Now, here's the thing, guys. I have some insights of the Tampa Pro, the Texas Pro, and the Tahoe Pro, who's doing these shows, and those shows are going to be very, very hard shows. They're going to be difficult to get your Olympia qualification. And there's a couple people that are being activated right now. Activation on some of these high-level bikini pros. We're talking Issa's going to be jumping back into it. Ariana's going to be possibly jumping back into it. You have Ivana, who just is jumping back. So Ivana just won a show in Colombia and is also going to be doing some more shows coming up. You still have Ashley that's still going to be doing some shows. So we have ourselves a lot of, I guess you want to call them, at this point, definitely call them blockers. Rihanna has just done another show, right? Are some of the athletes that competed recently going to go for more wins? You're going to see Ashlyn jump back on stage again. It is going to be a really tight race for those remaining 16 shows, but there's not going to be 16 more girls going into those 16 more shows. I'll tell you that. I'm going to guess that out of those 16 remaining Olympia qualification spots, I'm going to guess somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 of them are going to be taken by people who have already qualified for the Olympia, leaving ourselves somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8 to 9, somewhere in the maybe 8 to 10 spots possibly. But I'm guessing it might even be higher depending on who does it. Who knows what any of these girls are going to do. Any of them can just jump in and ruin someone's day, and a lot of them are ready to go right now. So it's going to be a crazy race for the Olympia, but we're also going to do today is we're going to cover some of the shows from recently. So there's been a few shows recently. I think one of the shows that I definitely wanted to cover today is going to be the Chicago Pro. So let's go ahead and jump into that show and talk about it. Now this weekend, Rihanna had a Amazing win. I wasn't surprised at all by her win here. One of my favorite physiques. Honestly, just has great traditional bikini lines. You know, that's one of the things I really like about Rihanna. She's one of the new up and comers. It's going to be a top talent. I do think her structure is one of the better structures in the IFBB right now. She has a classic bikini lines with that smaller waistline, that smaller, more petite frame, but has a good amount of muscle on that small frame. If you remember, a couple years back, she took off a full season to really focus on building some muscle. She's come back with a vengeance now. It's been, you know, a couple years of building muscle to get here, and she just looks fantastic. I'm loving what I'm seeing from her. Now, if you look at her overall detail, her legs are not too detailed. They are detailed, but they're not too detailed. This is the perfect bikini flow, where you're seeing detail in the legs, you're seeing a little bit of lines, but you're not seeing overly dense, overly grainy muscle, and that's what makes her so good, is that she has those pretty lines. You know, we want pretty muscle, not grainy, deep muscle. We're not looking for that women's bodybuilding deep grainy muscle, right? We're looking for bikini, soft flow, great structure, clavicle width, and she has all of that. Shoulder width, small waistline, great V taper without opening up her lats too much. Full glutes in the profile, nice roundness to her hamstring, great flow and detail to her legs. Tight, but not overly tight and not overly grainy. So and if you look at her versus the others in the top 5 here, which we'll go into a little bit, she has she has the best flow. The judges definitely got this one right. But I do want to go into the other athletes as well. So let's go ahead and take a look. Now, in second place here, now why does Rihanna win? Why does Rihanna win in this position here? And if you look, just a little bit too much power by Hope here compared to Rihanna. You know, she could win a show no problem compared to other athletes, but when you have someone that fits that perfect bikini physique, it's going to be really hard, because it's like, what does she do? She's already bigger than Rihanna, so it's not like she can get bigger. She's already bigger than her, right? She has more conditioning to her legs. It's not like she can get harder than Rihanna. She's already has more density than her. So what do? It's just not a competitor she's going to beat right now. She's going to have to fix her physique to have more of those traditional pretty bikini lines in order to move past Rihanna. But this is the thing that we run into, guys, and we're talking about it the other day at the shows. It's like, if she were to win this, they'd say, oh, they're going bigger again with more density again. And it's like, no, she's still second place. She's still the second pick here. Right? But if Rihanna wasn't there, everyone would be saying, oh, they're going bigger again, they're going harder again, more density again. And it's like, no, they pick who the best is that day, the best representative that day, giving all circumstances. And usually they get it right. They don't get it right 100% of the time, but they get it right a lot. So let's go ahead and go into third place. Why didn't Jessica win then if Jessica has more of those traditional bikini lines? Well, there's going to be a couple gaps in Jessica's physique here. So one thing that I don't love about Jessica's physique, and I love Jessica, and I love that she takes risks with her suits. I don't think that this suit creates enough contrast. This could be just the pictures. You know, I don't know if this is exactly how it looks on stage, but in the pictures at least, this is a very close suit color to her skin tone. It doesn't create that much contrast. Now, where she also loses is this upper outer edge of her glute. Real big area for her to miss on is just that upper outer edge. She misses it from the front. She misses it from the back. Honestly, that's pretty much the only place she misses it. There's really nothing else where she loses it. She has those traditional bikini lines. She has that pretty muscle. She has that soft flow where it's not overly conditioned. It's a very classic bikini physique. I'm not a fan of the suit. I think that her area of physique is she needs more upper glutes. I would change the suit color and then go from here. Now, going into Lizzie, again, we want to avoid that density of that muscle. Look at that density of that muscle. It is a lot of density. Maybe with all these examples of everyone here, you guys can see it a little better when I talk about with density, but that's what I'm talking about when we talk about density. So look at her density of her quads, the detail, the separation. Look at the hardness of this glute line, the separation of that glute line, and then look at Rihanna, right? Look at that leg and that density. Right, it's a pretty big difference when you're talking about density. Now, the way that you can kind of define density is density would be like if you looked at a steak at a grocery store, you would see all the grain in the muscle of that steak. That would be a good definition of, okay, that's too dense, right? You would want to have if you wanted to put it as another way of looking at it, like a water balloon that's full, right? So it's still round and hard. Water balloons are still hard and full and tight, but you're not seeing the grain. So you want the steak inside the water balloon. You don't want the steak outside of the water balloon. And this is where we get a little bit too much steak on the outside of the water balloon, just too much density, too much detail, and too much hardness. The flow, I've talked about her physique before. I love her physique. I love her flow. But you can see here, even the quad lines, you're seeing a lot of separation here. But this area here, that is a lot of density, a lot of deep detail, a lot of grain to the muscle. You know, it's just a little too much. You can also see in the shoulder caps, they're really, really hard caps, you know, really hard shoulder caps. Great physique in terms of the flow and the structure, but it is just a little too dense. Now, going on to Tiana, who's my athlete, of course. Oops, I went to the next page. Going on to Tiana, who's my athlete, of course. And actually, we can go to the back here, too, because actually it's a good example of the detail while we're still on Lizzie. So when you look at the detail on the back, you could see the etched tie-in. You can see the full separation line of the hamstring all the way down, right? You're seeing the full detail of that quad, and everything just looks skin tight. It is tight, tight, tight. You can see the deep V on the adductor going all the way down, and it travels quite a bit here too. So yeah, I think she can change her posing around a little bit to get less adductor showing, to get less of that quad overhang showing, and the conditioning I think is just a little overreached for her. Now, looking at Rihanna on her back shot, this is what we're talking about with bikini, guys, and this is why people get confused and they complain and they say, oh, they're going with this now, they're going with this now. You have to look at everything and step back from it and understand you're doing bikini. One, it's the most subjective class that there is, so you're gonna have some variance. Yes, there's gonna be variance of judges, but the window is like this. You know, the conditioning, one judge might like this level of conditioning, and then another judge might like a little softer over here. The window's still there. Some judges are going to err more on the harder side or on the softer side. Some judges are going to err more on the muscle side and on the less muscle side, but the window's still there. It's just, yes, some judges will be a little bit more like wanting a little bit more size, but we're not talking game-changing size. We're talking, okay, this judge likes a little bit more size, right? This judge likes a little bit less size. It's kind of one of those things, but it's not a game changer. It's all within that margin, right? And it's different for different physiques, different structures, and that's why it's so confusing, why people get so frustrated. But then you look at someone like Rihanna, and it's so obvious, right? Look at her lines. Look at those tie-ins. They're there, but they're not full etched tie-ins. And you're like, oh, well, why didn't Lizzie win? And you look at her, and you're like, okay, well, that's a lot more. That is a different thing, right? You look at her versus Rihanna, those are two completely different levels of density, two completely different levels of conditioning, and that makes it more obvious. Then you look at Jessica, right? You look at her and you say, okay, that is exactly the bikini lines. That's why she won Miss Bikini Olympia Masters, right? Now, the thing is, she still needs more of that upper glute, and that's why she's not second here. You know, that upper glute still needs more area of conditioning. And you could see from the back tilt too, that suit really isn't helping her pop, right? Look at Rihanna's suit and how the contrast is. That's what I want to see, contrast, right? You look at Hope's suit, that's contrast what I want to see. Now, Hope, again, on the lower part of the legs, I also will say her legs are a little bit thicker, and I think that it's going just slightly outside of those bikini lines. When you look at Rihanna and you look at Hope overpowers her with muscle quite a bit, but also the density and the detail of those hamstrings is quite a bit, you know? So looking at that again, sorry, for some reason when I go over to the right, it transitions over. This is a new setup for me, guys. All right, so when you look at this detail of those hamstrings, I mean, you're getting a deep V all the way down. You're getting a full separation line all the way down the hamstrings. You're getting some detail in between the hamstrings, and the tie-in, it's not an etched tie-in, so it's not fully etched. It's there, but it's not fully etched. It's a pound of body fat away from the etching, but you do see some graininess down here and some hardness down here, and that's why she loses here. You know, it's pretty simple. This is actually pretty easy judging, to be honest. I think the only confusion on the judging that you'd have here would be, should Jessica be like, how do you move someone? Do you pick the girl that's softer with less development on the glutes, Do you pick the girl who's harder with more development on the glutes? Like, which one is technically better for bikini? That's a, different judges can come to a different opinion on that. Or do you come to, Lizzie, who's got pretty much perfect amount of muscle on the backside, but it's too hard, right? That's kind of hard. But luckily, Rihanna's there and she makes it easy, And sometimes the judges are like, oh man, thanks for making it easy. Because if you had Rihanna not there at this show, how do you give someone an Olympia qualification? This girl's too hard and too dense, but she has the right amount of muscle on the backside. This girl's the right level of conditioning, but needs more muscle on the upper glutes. Great level of muscle, but just pushed barely past the level of muscle where we need it to be, and is a little bit too dense, right? So now you see how bikini's hard and how judges are going to give the appearance of getting it wrong or give the appearance of having too much muscle. And then you also have a suit factor, right? The suit doesn't really pop. So as you see, as I keep going, it gets more and more complex with this. Now, other thing I wanted to go into was Tiana, which Tiana has taken some good time off, and she's come back a lot more muscular than she was last year. She got a 5th place here, which she was super happy about. I'm very happy about it as well. And this is something that we've talked about. We just did a podcast with Tiana. She was coming in too hard the year prior. And I said, we're going to go for a softer look to see if we can get your legs to be less strided. Her legs were coming in way too detailed. And I said, we're going to have to be softer. We're going to have to match the upper body to the lower body in terms of body fat. It's going to be hard to do, and I don't know how your body is going to actually take to it. So we brought this level of conditioning in Vancouver, where she ended up taking 4th place in Vancouver. We made some posing adjustments going into this show, and I think everything worked out well. I think she placed as high as she could have with how much muscle she has now. But I think she's got a ton of potential. The only thing with Tiana is she still needs more muscle. And so we talked about it in the podcast. She's got great lines, great structure. Posing is awesome. She poses clients for online for her job. So it's just a matter of her just having more overall muscle. And once she gets that, she's going to be real tough to beat. Because in this lineup, structurally, she's one of the better girls in this lineup. Rihanna was the best structure-wise, no doubt about that. But you have Tiana here as a very close second. Again, traditional petite bikini lines with round poppy muscles with great tie-ins. And that's kind of like a genetic thing, a genetic structure. How do your tie-ins look? And that's why you can build as much muscle as someone, but it doesn't mean you're going to look as good as them, right? So her structurally, clavicle width is there too. So it's just a matter of time for her to get a little bit more developed, and then she's going to be right there. Now, we had a couple other shows this weekend. I wish I could give you a breakdown on the Columbia show. I can't. Unfortunately, the pictures are just not the best, and I don't want to make wrong assumptions. Sometimes, so I will say too, being in person and being in pictures is two different things. In Vegas, we have a venue here, Alexis Park, which is, I'll go into a show that we did this weekend here at Alexis Park, and the lighting there it's like an auditorium, and so the lighting is a little bit kind of makes everyone look softer in pictures than they actually look. So, you do run into that factor. That's a factor that Tyler talked about too, is like when we only see it with pictures, it's difficult. This is one of those shows is way too difficult for me to judge. Now, the only thing I'll say is critique is on the posing here. I think this is 3rd place. I think that just be careful with the posing. You can see like this leg is like hyperextended. Like look at how far back that knee sits. That does not look like a natural bikini pose. It looks it's going to catch the judge's eye in the wrong way. The other thing is hiding the glutes with that front hand. Amazing physique, but you can see very ribby in that front pose. Honestly, posing would change this girl's whole thing. She's got a great structure. I think she probably would have been 2nd place if she posed better. But when you pose that tall, upright, and your ribs start popping out, it's really going to be offsetting on your physique. It's not going to look great. When you pose with your leg like hyperextended like that, it's really not going to be great for you. And the judges always need to see your glutes. You see how Evie here, who won the show, congrats Evie, you could see the glutes and you could see it. The judges can see the glutes from this way. The judges can see the glutes from this way. You can't block your glutes, okay? Now, that's another thing that I would say here too. I think because of her positioning, she's fine. The judges are all right here, so they can see her glutes, no problem. If she was over here doing the same thing, you wouldn't be able to see them. So just something, just something to keep an eye on. Unfortunately, there's just not enough good enough lighting to critique this show. I really wanted to too, because Evie's back. I think she's going to be active. She's a very active competitor, and I think that she has you're going to be seeing her, I think, again soon. So I think she's going to be one of the ones taking up Olympia spots. Now, looking at the backside, again, I can't really go into it. These girls do look very detailed in their tie-ins. Some of them look like they weren't the best in the conditioning. I think this was a very easy win for Evie. So congrats, Evie, for your win. Now, going into one of the shows over the weekend here in Vegas, which was an awesome show. I had 3 of our athletes competing. I had a really good, I want to give them a shout out too on this, but it was awesome. It was one of my favorite moments watching. Kimber, my wife, got a first call out. Ashley got a first call out, and Yume got a first call out, and they were all in line here at this show. It was a really cool moment for them, and these are like the cool moments that keep me going and just are just cool moments in the industry when things like this happen. All 3 were there. All 3 were lined up, and for a couple turns, it didn't stay. I wish it went 1, 2, 3 like that. It didn't stay that way, but that's okay. It was a fun moment for them. So I want to go into this because this is good for the controversy that we covered the other week when Brittany Hamilton was talking. And actually, I'm going to go into that first because this is where these things happen. Okay. Now, as we went into this show, we talked about. If you're following it, everyone follows Bikini. Ashley got second place, and everyone's like, man, that's weird. How did Ashley get second place here? And I want to go into the feedback the judges gave me, or gave us, I should say. And they said, hey, she was just not her. She was a little bit off today, but at the night show, she was spot on. If she would have came like that to the morning show, she would have won. That's really all it was. She's just a little bit better at night than the morning. She would have won. And I was like, what changed from the morning to night? She looked exactly the same. And I was like, the only thing that changed was the one like little error, which was like a presentation error with her hair. I'm like, is that really that big of a factor? And it was a mistake, and it was a mistake on my part. And I'm going to go into that on that critical error. And this is why things get really strange in Bikini, and they look a different way. Now, before we go into this, though, I want to go back into the comments of the other day that Brittany Hamilton said. And I'm only going back into these because it's relevant to today. And I was like, what a good lesson this could be for everyone in Bikini. And I want to go into the comments as well, okay? Because it's a kind of a credibility thing that I want to do. I think it's important too, because if you're a competitor out there and you're watching this and you're reading these comments, because there's a lot of girls jumping on the bandwagon here and being like, everyone's in the comments saying, yeah, that's the judges, they're saying they're doing a different thing here, a different thing there, and no one's consistent and this and that. And I'm like, guys, it's pretty consistent. What's inconsistent is the girls who show up to the shows. If the top 6 or top 10 were competing as much as Ashley, you would see so much consistency amongst the shows that you wouldn't ever say anything. The problem is how many of the top 10 actually compete as much as Ashley. How many shows do you get out of those girls? You have Ashley and you have Amy competing frequently. Who else, right? Jennifer, you're going to see her once a year, twice a year maybe, right? Maureen, once a year, twice a year maybe. Laura Lee, 2, 3 times a year, right? Go all the way down, and you're going to see those girls 2 times a year, pretty much max for almost all of them, right? So the thing is, those girls are the standard, but they're not showing up to the shows. There's 68 Bikini shows. So, unless you're going to get a lot of variance, and then this stuff is going to happen. You're going to be like, oh, the judges are judging differently here, right? And they're saying different things, or whatever, right? So that's where I think that this got kind of turned into this, and I want to, the industry deserves credibility because they've worked really hard at getting it right. And behind the scenes, guys, I'm talking to Tyler, to Sandy, to everyone. Like we're talking back and forth about the judging of this show, the judging of that show. Like how did it go? Where errors were. Like they really care, and I want to just talk about that because there's a lot of people in the comments saying, "Oh yeah, they judge it differently everywhere and this and that." I'm like, it's not what it seems like, guys. It's really, really not. I want to complain too, and there are times where I've complained. I do think sometimes they've gone too much with muscle. In the last, let's say 10 years, it's changed quite a bit in muscle. I fought it for a little while, but it's just now that's kind of the standard now, and it's just been a little bit more. But they've kind of stopped. I would say the last 3 years, they've stopped with more muscle, and they said, hey, no more, and they've kind of stuck to it. So I'm happy with where it's at right now, and I'm like the biggest, advocate for the girls because I don't want them to get bigger. I don't want them to have to get harder because that generally comes with a lot more hard work, which comes with a little bit more time, usually comes with another month of dieting and crushing these girls. So I'm on your guys' team, but this one is a little bit wrong. So if you want to read this again, maybe you've already read it, but it was something that went to, you could go to the comments. Brittany's an awesome girl. I don't think she intended to be controversial. It's just she talked about what was said, and I think there was just some straight up confusion of how the judges said things and where this came out. But to recap, to kind of go back into it, she was saying basically, she said she's disappointed that the head judge told her flat out, we judge differently over here, and I would need to be bigger and harder. For one, the standard should be the same in the industry. Two, every judge this year has told her to downsize. Okay, so let's go into that part of it, because this is where people were in the comments, chirping in the comments. And so first comment, I believe what was being severely glossed over is not really touched on, is we judge differently over here comment and feedback that is the opposite of Tyler, Etilet, and Sandy, right? Okay, so let's go into the head judge there. We have another one, same thing. They really need to line up the criteria in Europe and Asia to the U.S. standards. Again, get the U.S. girls in Europe and Asia, and they will line up the same day. But the girls in U.S. are not going to Asia and Europe. That's the problem. Okay, another one. The biggest critique is the judge making the comment that they judge things differently over here, right? Okay, so those are the comments. This is funny to me because I think someone just says something and everyone just takes it as fact. Like, oh, that's what they said 100%. And they don't think, maybe there was some emotion that went into that. You know, this girl just went overseas. She's been told she's too big all year. And, you know, it's emotional. Maybe she heard things a different way. Maybe he was saying, hey, over here, because the girls show up a little bit harder, you know, we're forced to make decisions that are a little bit different than in the U.S. And then she took it as, hey, they said over here they go bigger and harder, right? And I wanted to point this out because it starts costing the industry credibility if people just automatically believe these things. Because I didn't believe it for a second. Do you know why I didn't believe it for a second? I'm going to go into why I didn't believe it for a second. Because it is so obvious and in your face, I don't know why anyone didn't talk about it. And I didn't cover it so well. The head judge she's talking about is not some obscure, once a year, I show up to the UK and I don't do any other shows throughout the year. The head judge she's talking about is an Olympia level judge, okay? Olympia level judge. It's not some guy who does one show in Europe once a year and he judges differently. He judges shows all over the world and a ton of shows in the US. So you're telling me that this judge, when he gets on a plane, changes his mind and judges completely different, gets back on that plane and judges completely different when he gets back to the US? So based on his zip code, he's judging differently? That's not realistic. That's not what's happening. And let's just look at it one step further. The girl who won, was she more muscular than Brittany? No, she was smaller than Brittany. The girl who won, was she leaner than Valeria? No, she was softer than Valeria. So if the judge is picking bigger and harder over there, how did he not pick either of them in the top 5 if both of them are bigger and harder than the person who won? Common sense, guys. Don't give in to this stuff. It's really frustrating for me because when someone says something like this and everyone jumps on the bandwagon, it costs the industry credibility. And I'm not going to stand for it when it's wrong, when it's blatantly wrong. I will stand for whoever is right. I will always stand for whoever is right, no matter how it makes me look. The reality is this didn't happen. Okay, this was either said in a way where it got confused and everyone jumped on saying, oh, that's what happened. The girls who are winning shows in the U.S. are not doing shows in Europe. That's the problem. That's why it looks different. It's very expensive to go to Europe. It's unknown area, the food, getting your food over there. You're going to get 1-2 American girls in the European shows, and then you're going to get 15 other girls. And yeah, maybe the girls from America are going to be holding water when they travel overseas and are not going to look the same, and they don't win, right? And it's like, oh, they only picked these girls over here. No, there's a lot that goes into it, guys. It's really dumb, honestly, how everyone jumped on it, and people were in there like saying, oh, you missed this part. And I'm like, dude, stop white knighting. You don't know what you're talking about. The reality is this judge is a high-level judge. He's one of, I think it's 13 judges in the world that get to judge the Olympia, which is super hard to get into. You don't just they don't just randomly pick judges for the Olympia. You earn your way to judging the Olympia. Just like you earn your way to get to the Olympia as an athlete, you earn your way to the Olympia as a judge by being consistent, by being good, by knowing the criterias, right? So let's just drop that nonsense right away. And it's just that judge doesn't deserve it. That I would have picked probably the same girl based on the whole package. I wasn't there, but one of the top 3 girls for sure. I did really like 3rd place there. I will say that. Okay, now going on to the other comments. It's funny, other people are like saying here, you said, hi, Adam, love your videos. The equestrian sports are exactly like bikini. Different judges like different things. And what wins today may lose tomorrow. And that's the thing about bikini, guys. If you're choosing to do bikini, it is anyone's day, any day, right? It goes, we say it goes any way, any day. That's bikini, especially when there's a lot of random girls at the shows, which changes things up. All right, now another one here. I thought I had another one of these comments. So here it is. This is funny because this is the same, and I don't want to bring the judge's name into it, so that's why I didn't want to. But he's a nice guy. All right, it says, so the head judge has been an Olympia judge for ages. I was there when they gave feedback. He never mentioned anything about judging differently in Europe. How can they say that when he's an American judge? Obviously, who judges the Olympia? She either misunderstood him or is straight up lying. So this guy goes a little harder than I do. But the reality is, it's one of those things that comes up that could cost credibility to the industry when everyone's thinking that it's fact, and then it can make a girl not want to do a show. So I wanted to go into that, and I also want to go into it today because it was a good time to do it, because I can give you an example of how these things can happen. So as we talked about earlier at the Patriots show, had obviously 3 of my athletes, 3 first call outs. I was super happy about it. But Ashley didn't win this show, and a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, how come Ashley didn't win? Whenever Ashley doesn't win, it's always, I do feel bad for her because she carries the weight of being Ashley. I carry the weight of being her coach, and when she loses, it's like, oh my gosh, what did Adam do to mess up or whatever. I'll take this one. This is something that I should have seen, but this is bikini, and these are the little things that happen. You do a lot of shows, something's going to happen here and there. And I do want to show it. And remember, the judges at finals told me if she looked like she did at finals, she would have won, right? And I was thinking to myself, what could I have done differently to make her look like at finals? And I was like, nothing. She looked exactly the same in the morning show she did at finals. It was only 3 hours earlier. What the heck happened? And then what happened was, and I'm going to go into it here, was just a presentation. So if you look at Ashley's hair, you see how it's over her shoulder here? I want to go into that and why that is. So this is what happened, and this is my fault. So here's what happened. Ashley has the same extensions that she had in Vancouver. Ashley just won the Vancouver show. She's at 48 pro wins. She's chasing the goal to 50, be the first athlete to 50 that there's ever been, and it's an amazing goal that she's pursuing, but it does take a lot to do that. She has to do a lot of shows to do that. She takes a lot of risks, and in bikini, it goes any way, any day, like we just said. This show, so at the Vancouver Pro, she won with a perfect score. She got to win number 48, which was just awesome, and it's crazy to be part of 48 wins. I can't even describe to you how crazy it is. But her hair was a little bit long in Vancouver. That was a week ago, right? She's wearing the same hair. It's the same extensions. And I physically cut her hair myself in Vancouver to be perfectly on the right side of her, a little bit above her suit here. It was actually a little bit higher. I don't know. I think she just placed them a little bit lower in her hair where they are now going on top of her glutes. And then on top of that, the hair was wider covering her shoulders, right? And I was like, so I saw her do her posing routine, and I was like, oh crap, we got a problem, right? She's like, her last name's Kay, so she's in the middle, but it wasn't a big show. There's like 17 girls or 16 girls. So by the time she went on stage, I ran back and I was like, hey, your hair's covering your shoulders, and it's like coming down on top of the glutes a little bit, right? It was perfect last weekend, but I don't know how it positioned where it just got wider. When she flipped it, it just stayed wide, or how it was dressed today, it got wide. Maybe she put her head back a little bit on the back pose, and it reached down lower on her glutes. Maybe it was lower here. I gave a look in the morning. I looked at her. She was had her hair. She's like, what did my hair look like? Whatever. We looked at it. Everything looked fine. I didn't catch that. We do a lot of shows. I don't know how I didn't see this. This is my fault. I'll take this one. So she did her hair. She did her flip, and I was like, damn, it's covering her whole back. You can't see any of her back here. Her shoulders, her back. But you got to remember, this was the same hair from last weekend. It was fine. It was fine last weekend. So right? So the judges, they're not seeing her at her best. They're not seeing her shoulder width. They're not seeing her waist. Her waist looks wider from the back because it's covered. Like if that's her hair, that looks like that's her waist, but it's not her waist. Her waist is tiny. But her waist, here's her waist. Her hair makes her waist look this wide, right? So I ran back, like, hey, gotta change your hair, nah. She says, okay, I know what I can do. I'll just throw it over my shoulder. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's throw it over your shoulder. I ran back to the front. This is what it looked like on the back. It's over the shoulder was no good. You're seeing like it just doesn't look balanced. It doesn't look right. I wish I would have caught this. It would have changed things. It would have changed the judge's perspective. So what happened? The judges, they said, oh, she looks better at night. She would have won. That's what happens in bikini. She looks different with her hairline being different. Her waist looks smaller. Her shoulders look wider. And you could see it from the front pose too, because that hair is over the shoulder. It does cause a little bit of, it's difficult to see. So this is why bikini is so crazy. But now, you're not going to see Ashley saying, oh, they judge so differently at every show and this and that. It's like, okay, I don't know why I made a little mistake. I'll correct it. It's bikini. It goes any day, anyway, any day. I'll go to the next one, right? The judges still loved her physique. It's not like it changed at all. Like it was like, it's gotten worse. It's got nothing but better. But hey, it's bikini. You're going to have to take it on the chin. You can't be like, oh, this judge is this, right? Whatever. This one, there is an area. Now, there's sometimes where the judge just has a different preference, and I think the judge might be a little bit too new, and they don't get that. You run into that with the newer judges. This one I see as valid reasoning because that is an error. And what's funny is the judges didn't say anything specifically about the hair, but they referenced that she was better at night, and at night we corrected the hair. And they referenced things that wouldn't normally be referenced of Ashley that were not something anyone has ever said to us before, that would only happen if her hair was blocking what their vision was. And I was like, it's so crazy that they're seeing it without seeing it, but they couldn't identify it. And, it's still an error on our part. And yeah, in that scenario, you have to be flawless in bikini. But let's go ahead and go into now the physiques. But I just like to mention that because it happens to me too. These things where the judges have these different, it looks like, now if you don't understand what happened at the show, you don't know the backstory of the show, you just think, oh, Alice destroyed Ashley or whatever, right? It's not just that. Like there's reasonings that go into it. And yeah, Alice is good enough. Alice is great. Alice could beat Ashley on another day. And then on that day, she was good. She was great. Who knows for certain if Ashley would have won if there wasn't a hair issue, right? Alice is actually pretty damn good. So I don't know the answer to that, but I would lean towards that's not going to happen based on what the judges told me, but there is an error here. Now, looking at Alice's physique, what does she need to do to be good at the Olympia? Great physique. Now, first off, I love Alice's look. I love her hair. Don't change it. I love it. I love her look. I love everything about it. Her makeup, her suit color. Now, she does need more overall muscle. If you look at, this is where Ashley really wins in this contest. If you look at Ashley's lat and you look at Alice's lat from the front, the overall width is just better with Ashley, like the shoulder width and shoulder development. The lat width, this is where she really needs to develop to be competitive at the Olympia. Great waistline, great tiny waistline. She's very, very profile, and maybe that's part of the reason why her lat isn't showing as much. So I think she can open up her waistline a little bit more to show more of her shoulder width and to show maybe open up more of that lat to be more competitive with the girls that are bigger. Because you got to remember, Alice looks a little small in the upper body next to Ashley, and Ashley looks small next to Jennifer in the upper body, right? So you got to remember, if you're trying to hang with the big girls, Laura Lee's, the Jennifers, right? And Ashley's small to them, but you're small to Ashley, you're really small to them, right? So that's where she needs to improve on. I also think that there's a little bit of grain detail in her glutes here. There's just a little bit too much grain detail. I don't think Ashley's conditioning was off. The judges said she might be a little bit tight. They also told us that they judge her a little bit harder because of she is who she is, and it's hard not to. When she's like a little bit off, it's just they have in their heads, hey, she always looks like X, right? We're used to seeing her like X. So it's unfortunate, but it's one of the risks you take when you compete as much as she does. She's not only competing against Alice, but she's also competing against the person that the judges know is her best. and they can start saying in their head, oh, I've seen her better, even though that's not necessarily fair. It's just kind of human instinct, right? When you see someone, you're like, oh, I've seen her a little better. So that's another issue that she runs into. But hey, if you compete as often as you do, you're trying to do great things, you got to take great risks. It is what it is. She knows it. I know it. And sometimes you're going to get the short end of the stick of that. There's a lot of positives that go with competing often. There's a lot of negatives that go with competing often. There's a lot of negatives that go with competing in bikini, especially. Now, from the back, this is where Ashley gets. Now, I only say she only gets beat because of her hair here, right? Look at Ashley's lats. Can't see him, right? Look at Ashley's tiny waistline. Really can't see it. Even her rear delts can't really see it too great, right? That's very unfortunate. Just a small little mistake can cost you the whole thing. But Ashley, as you know, great V-taper, great tiny waistline. But the hair is even on top of the glutes here. It's just a small critical error. I don't know. Honestly, it's probably an inch down on the hair, and then just instead of putting it wide, tucking it down would have won the show. It's literally something as simple as that. But it changes the whole physique, right? It changes the whole thing. And I can't step back and be like, hey, judges, you should see it. You should be able to see that because you're good enough judge to be able to see that. Even with the hair, you should see that, right? It's a fair comment for me to say that, but it's also an unfair comment, right? We're too experienced to mess up like that. It's the judge's job to judge what's in front of them that day. We didn't present everything perfectly that day to them, and we hid some key things. It's a fair argument. If they're going to give it to Alice, I can't argue with this critical of an error. And it's just something I got to take on the chin. We'll never make that mistake again. And it's just one of those things, and it's unfortunate. But at the same time, you know what? It's funny is that there's so many of these girls that I really just have a heart for. Alice, I backstage, she's just a sweet girl. You could say she's genuinely excited to win. Like she's grateful and just an awesome competitor. So I'm happy when they win too. It's a great moment to watch these people accomplish their goals. One of the things with being Ashley, it is a little hard sometimes to be crushing people's dreams to get to the Olympia because they keep getting second next to Ashley. So sometimes you're like, okay, I mind, but I don't mind. I wish you luck, but I kind of don't wish you luck kind of thing. It's actually funny because I told Alice that I said, I wish you luck, but not like too much luck. So now with Alice, the same thing from the back. A little bit more in the V-taper I think would help. Now, here's the thing about Alice with her shorter hair. She shows the back, so she has to have the back, right? You can either cover those lats up and not have to show them so much, or you can show those lats and hey, they better be showing some lat width. That's some of the risk you guys take with those shorter that shorter hair. Now with the rear delts though, great rear delts, great shape to her back, great clavicle width, a good waistline. On her, especially with those upper glutes. The upper glutes on Alice are crazy fullness of the upper glute. Tie-ins. Pretty good. They're about where they need to be, a full tie-in without an edge tie-in. Ashley does win on the glutes in terms of the density, the fullness, the tie-in. She also wins on the fullness of the roundness of the hamstring as well. But the overall look from the back, yeah, you got to go with Alice. If you like the smaller waistline from the front, you can go with her too. Now the problem with the hair being and it's not the hair being on the shoulder, it's the volume of hair being on the shoulder. It kind of hides that back shoulder and it narrows her up a little bit too. So it's an easy one to get confused as a judge, and it's just a small thing, and that's why in bikini things can look a certain way when they're not necessarily a certain way. This mistake won't happen at the Olympia. This is a good reason why we do these shows too, so we can learn from the mistakes that we made throughout the year. But this definitely won't happen at the Olympia. And, you'll see, I think you'll still see Ashley in that first call out because of it. And, and it's just one of those things. It's bikini. So take every show with a grain of salt, guys. There's not some controversy of different judging a different state a different way or a different country. You're not winning because you're not there yet, and that's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand too, is that when a judge gives you feedback and a judge says to you, oh, like after the show, they say, oh, you need to have less, like let's take Brittany, for example. You need to have less muscle. You need to have a little bit less shoulders, right? Okay, when the judge says that, it doesn't mean that if you had less shoulders, you still might not have won that show. It just means that you're going to be a little bit better for your physique. And that's where people get messed up. Like, oh, the judge said I need more upper glutes. I have more upper glutes now, and they're still not giving me the win, but they said I just needed more upper glutes. No, they said you needed more upper glutes, but they didn't say if you have more upper glutes, you'll win this show and you'll dominate the Olympia, right? Just because you get a little better doesn't mean you're still doesn't mean you'd win that show. You still might structurally not be there. You might be reaching your structural potential. Sorry guys, this is a genetic sport. There's some things you can't change. Not everyone is meant to be a champion in this sport. I know that sucks to hear. I'm one of those guys. Believe me, I wish I was on Mr. Olympia stage. So it is what it is. That's the reality of the sport. But I wanted to kind of show this today to create some just some awareness that it happens to everyone, even the best. Things happen that make shows look a certain way. That doesn't mean that they are that way. Bikini is the toughest division. It's the most subjective criteria. If you want to have absolute consistency in a sport, do not do bikini. I'll repeat that. If you want consistency in a sport, do not do bikini. Run track, right? Because the fastest person always wins in track. That's the only, but you're not playing that type of sport. That's not how it goes. This is the most subjective class. Your hair can cost you a win. So anyway, with that, guys, thank you so much. TeamElitePhysique.com for online coaching with me. I'll talk to you guys next time. Did I get it right? Leave it in the comments here. Talk to you soon.